hoped 2024 would be different, but your days are still crazy. You feel that you need to know the whole story to win in your business, whether that's when planning or trading. There's never been more pressure to know not just what makes you money, but who makes you money. Today's guest is here to help you with this. Welcome to Inside Retail, the podcast brought to you by Edited, the world's leading AI-driven retail intelligence platform. In this podcast, we delve into the current retail landscape, uncovering the opportunities and challenges it's facing, with me, Grace Hill. In this episode, I'm speaking to someone who is on a mission to put the customer at the center of all decision-making. Under Armour's Director of Merchandising for Europe, Middle East and Africa, Sara. As someone who started at the company as an admin assistant over 12 years ago, Sara has an extensive understanding of not only what Under Armour stands for, but exactly who they are serving. I'm looking forward to finding out from Sara about how to be strategic with promotions and discounting in such a challenging macroeconomic environment when faced with rising inventory levels, plus how Under Armour creates opportunities to foster brand loyalty and how the customer influences innovation within their business. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited to have you on the podcast. It sounds like you've had a pretty busy morning.
Yes, surprise busy morning, but that's okay. It's part of the job.
We love the surprises.
Yes.
Right. So I guess to kick off, we would love to hear more about you and your career. I know that you've been at Under Armour for 12 years. So it would be wonderful for you to tell us about your journey to becoming Director of Merchandising for EMEA, EMEA at Under Armour.
Yeah, absolutely. So I did start actually as an administrative assistant with the company 12 years ago in the legal department. So on top of fixing printers and fax machines, dating myself there, it was really important and actually a wonderful journey for me because I learned a lot about how a corporation operates. So I supported everyone from corporate governance, sustainability, patent, sports marketing contracts. So it was a wonderful experience, but I didn't feel that passion that I was really hoping to build my career. So I started shadowing a bunch of different departments and I ended up in a product role, which I absolutely loved. So I helped build the accessories product for the brand. And then the opportunity came to move to Amsterdam outside of a career. So I had been born and raised in Baltimore, and I was really looking for a new opportunity. So I made the jump to Amsterdam and actually took a step back in my career. So I was a manager at the time, went back down to a senior professional so I could take a step back and learn all about a whole new region. I had a lot to learn coming from a North American background. And from there, I just really asked for more. I continued to learn and grow, and I was told no multiple times for certain opportunities, but I just kept pushing. So I was able to take on bigger and bigger aspects of the business. And then when the role and the opportunity came to lead the merchandising department for EMEA for Under Armour, I went for it and I was successful, and it's been a wonderful journey from there.
Wow, what a journey. And
it's
some incredible tenacity as well.
Keep asking.
Yeah, absolutely. So could you tell us a little bit more about what your role actually entails?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's my role as the head of merchandising to bring brand enhancing and profitable assortments to the EMEA region. It covers consumer relevancy and the size of the assortment based on how mature our market is. It also involves segmentation. So it's important that we are aligned to the experience that the consumer expects to receive at all the different touch points, and also to drive differentiation in the market. So that all comes under the merchandising department here in EMEA.
So I guess ultimately, the product that sits in the EMEA region is your responsibility.
Yes, and it's also our job to make sure that we can synthesize and pull together what the consumer needs from the brand here in EMEA back to our global product engine. So it's not just about bringing the right product from the global product engine into the region, but also influencing the product engine to truly be global and to take all consumer needs into consideration when we're building product.
Yeah, that was a question that I wanted to ask you was
Yeah.
just to give us a bit more insight in how does your role interact with that global engine that's based out in the US?
It's highly collaborative. We always point back to the brand strategy. We take all of the consumer insights that we feel throughout the year in the market through trend, and we make sure that we funnel that back through the key go-to-market milestones to make sure that the product that comes out of that engine is relevant not only for North America, but EMEA and APAC. So we do follow the go-to-market process to make sure that it's organized and streamlined and efficient, but it really is highly collaborative back and forth to make sure that all the needs of the consumer globally are met.
And I think one thing that I continuously notice is your emphasis on the customer and the consumer. I guess I'm really curious to get your take on how the day-to-day of merchandising has shifted over the past 12 years.
Yeah, I would say the first is really data and the way that we have access to data. Before, you were always in the street, visiting stores, seeing the way the consumer navigated, touch and felt product, and then introduced this whole digital landscape of shopping. So with that combination, you need to constantly make sure you're up to speed on how assortments are evolving, how the consumer is evolving, and how you can stay ahead of trend. Also, social media has been incredible for us. You can see the impact influencers have and what inspires your consumer and drives them, to want to shop and be a part of your brand. So what I've really seen evolve is that you have to understand what data points are important to you because you can also get lost in them, but how to really leverage it to stay true to who you are as a brand and how to really use that data to achieve the strategy that you've put into place.
Well, I would love to dig into that further as we go on. But to really kind of kick off as a subject matter expert, I would really like your take and insight onto the current trading conditions in the sportswear market within the context of this uncertain environment.
Yeah, there is some high discounting still going on, which we would hope maybe had improved coming out of COVID, but we are still seeing it happen. We're also seeing the digital business soften, and we would hope that some of that or most of that would go into the brick and mortar business, but we're still seeing that it's not fully transferring. So the drop we see in digital isn't coming through in the brick and mortar sales. So what I think is going to be really important is that you're really surgical about how you discount. Mm-hmm. There is a consumer looking for a full price experience. So these blanket discounts where you perhaps take 30% off your assortment across every country and every touch point, you can do that, but you're probably losing margin somewhere. So it takes focus and time to really go into the channels, the product categories, what's working, what's not. And then that also really helps you manage your inventory because, of course, we don't want to be giving margin away. We really want to push full price sell-through. So I say the macroeconomic conditions are making it hard, but all it does is really push for more attention to detail and more cross-functional collaboration. It takes sales, VM, planning, merchandising, all to work together to understand where can they really drive the business forward and where do they need to make strategic decisions on needing to discount to keep inventory in a healthy place.
And I know especially kind of in peak trading, especially getting towards kind of the end of the year with the holidays, obviously it's a huge collaborative effort to really drive those sales and kind of maximize the business. So I'm curious for you, any key takeaways that you've had over the past few weeks or this quarter around Black Friday and as we head towards the end of the year?
From what we really saw was that loyalty is becoming more and more important. So you don't even need to have an official loyalty program in order to find ways to really celebrate the consumers that have been with the brand and that truly love the brand. So on top of, those discounts that you need to advertise to the general public, we need to find moments through these peak commercial periods to give a special opportunity to those consumers. And that is what we've seen has been really successful for us because we know those consumers are going to come back, their conversion's higher, their average basket is higher. So in a very tough industry, it's important to hone in and focus and be sharp on your target consumer and the consumers that love your brand. And if you can celebrate the relationship you have with them, that can also help drive and protect your business for future growth.
I I feel like that's such a great takeaway, especially in an environment when brand loyalty is so lacking and limited. And I think really, as you said, doubling down, celebrating those VIPs or loyal customers. Could you give us kind of an example of what that type of initiative could look like, or what's that look like for Under Armour?
Yeah, I think it depends on which promotional stage you're going into. So let's think about end of season sale. We know the consumer is looking for a bargain. They know that that is the product where its life cycle is ending. It's normally high discounts, but also tough size run. So you normally can't find your size, or it's the style that you were hoping that you could find has already been sold out because you weren't quick enough. So one thing you can do to really celebrate that relationship you have with the loyal consumers is giving them private early access to the assortment. So you know that you're not having to give more discount. So again, you're not giving away margin, but you're creating a special opportunity for them to get the best pick of what is available at that time. Maybe they're able to get that commercial size that will be sold out in a few days. But if you can create that space, you're able to drive loyalty without, like I said, increasing the discount. So it feels like a win-win both for the company and the brand image, but also to build that special experience for those loyal consumers.
And I feel like as well, when you were talking, you were saying earlier about how you're seeing that digital business soften. I'm curious, obviously those types of promotions obviously caters well to your kind of digital e-commerce experience. How are you seeing that play out in brick and mortar stores, or how can you really kind of build that customer experience in that type of environment as well?
I think what's really important is to find ways to protect the consumer journey. You want to tell stories. You want to connect with the consumer. If you all of a sudden change that consumer journey to cluster items that are on sale, you're not enhancing their experience as they shop the brand through a commercial moment. Perhaps, let's say, do a threshold discount. So you get 20 or 15% off the whole store instead of picking select items.
I guess on the topic of promotional pressures, we know that rising inventory levels have forced many retailers to take extremely, heavy markdowns. We've seen that through Black Friday. Logistic costs are eroding margin. On the topic of protecting the brand, protecting the customer journey, could you elaborate on how Under Armour has approached addressing this challenge over the past year without impacting the brand itself?
The first thing I would say is really it starts inside the company. It starts inside the brand. So if you have an aligned strategy and a highly cross-functional collaborative environment, that's what's really going to drive the success. So macroeconomic change, pressures can come and go, but if you start with that solid foundation internally with your teams, then you all have the right focus and the right drive in the same direction. So I think our success in managing inventory has really been started from within the organization. Then when it comes to what we do in wholesale and in our DTC business, it kind of goes back to being, like I said, pretty surgical on getting deeper into the details instead of just putting a blanket discount across all products and all points of distribution. There are consumers that are still shopping full price and are willing to pay a premium for the right price of value for those products. So honing in and finding where those consumers are through either data or from the sellout trends you see, then that helps you focus your energy and your full price sellout on those touch points. And then you need to maybe be more strategic about where you're seeing a slowdown in the business and come up with an action plan. We do have an outlet channel. So we do use the outlet channel to keep the market clean. But again, keeping that sharp eye on the flow and the life cycle of the product is important because, of course, you don't want to be taking product out too soon or discounting it too high in those full price environments. You really want to leverage your outlet channel to do that work for you.
And in terms of the data and its importance to you in your role and also your teams in really kind of executing on your strategy, could you share for us how you are using data to make more informed decisions around that full price customer? What is it that you're looking at and how are you using that in your business?
Data is critical for us in making those decisions. I would say throughout every GTM milestone, from the beginning of the product creation all the way to the end experience for the consumer, we use data in different ways, shapes, and form, but it's part of and integrated into everything that we do. We do take a look at sellout data from wholesalers and DTC, but we also look at the trend with our competition. So we do use Edited as a price scraping tool, not only to understand how the consumer is reacting to prices, but how they're responding to new arrival activation. How does that flow? How many times can we get the consumer to come back and shop and experience and be inspired by something new that we're adding to the site?
So, in terms of looking at the wider market, what about your competitors is it that you're interested in monitoring?
We're interested in monitoring the flow of product, the size of the assortment and the offering to the consumer, and how the competitors are looking at price to value for their products. It's really important that we shift to understanding what the consumer is experiencing in the broader marketplace and what is our sharp point as a brand so we can stay true to our brand direction and our brand strategy, and how do we find pockets of opportunity in the market. It's also, how we try to find and solve for the athletes' problems. We're always looking for what are those pockets of opportunity to make the consumer better and to inspire them. So as we look at the competitive landscape through Edited, we take a look at the SKU count, the flow, the color options, where are those price points where we think we have maybe a superior product where we can start to take market share away.
So I guess you've spoken through like your pre-season and in-season. So when you're in season and you're monitoring, the market, what's selling out, how does that inform your decision making?
We first look at how we can continue to drive revenue in that current season. Mm-hmm. Is the consumer trading from a mono-brand environment online to a multi-brand environment? That way you can kind of leverage maybe your marketplace or your drop ship capabilities to be able to understand where the consumer is trending and make sure your brand is there and visible to them. You can also take a look at how that sellout trend influences future seasons. So if we're seeing that all of a sudden a drop off in fleece due to the extension of warmer weather in certain regions and a real big shift to wovens, we can already start to say, okay, where are wovens picking up? Where are wovens slowing down? Could we potentially trade those units from one channel into another to capitalize on that sellout trend? And then how do we feed that back into the global engine to make sure we have enough excitement coming out next season in wovens to continue to fuel and drive that business and then optimize perhaps the fleece assortment in that example?
So almost a feedback loop and getting back to that pre-season planning again and just continuously optimizing the business.
Yeah, absolutely.
In your opinion then, how important is market context in great decision making in merchandising?
It's absolutely critical. And it's how you really put this consumer at the center of everything you do. We do focus groups from a local school all the way to NBA All-Stars. So that of course is one element. But if you really want to get closer to the consumer in each marketplace, you have to have that data and you have to have the sharp focus on that data to know exactly, like I said, how to leverage it, which KPIs you want to focus on. So again, SKU count, color, price point, silhouettes, and that's how you can really capitalize on the trend and make sure that your brand stays relevant and that you're bringing the right products to market that can continue to inspire them and have them fall in love with your brand, which turns them into a repeat consumer.
I love that insight. And I think as well, it's almost impossible to get data on every customer in every market. You cover a huge variety of different markets and different customers. So I think to be able to prioritize and scale that information is going to be extremely important to win and have strategic advantage in those key categories. And as a leader, your teams are so busy. They've got a lot on their plates. How are you motivating them to prioritize being market aware?
So I'd say we do need to create space for it. So if you as a leader make sure that you prioritize the consumer and it's embedded deep into your strategy, then the team has a clear vision on how important the consumer is. And we know that when you put the consumer at the center of everything you do, you win. So the first thing I would say is to make sure the consumer is integrated into your strategy, make sure there's a clear prioritization for the team, and then help them find the balance of being in the market and then using the data tools that they have at their fingertips here in the office. It's also really important that you can view the data in a clear and visual way, which is why I think the platforms that Edited creates and the dashboards that Edited creates makes it an easy solve and an easy go-to point to understand more about the consumer. So if it becomes, a data dump or an Excel, you spend just as much time trying to understand the data that's available to you, and that takes away from coming up with a plan on how to get after that consumer. So if you can leverage a tool that can help pull the data together in a really clear and visual way, and also customizable to what category you're focused on, then you can really spend extra time on how to win with that consumer rather than having to, formulate additional pivot tables and view lookups to get to the answer that you're looking for.
Which is not what merchandisers want to be spending their time doing.
It's a balance of art and science, but
exactly.
maybe not too deep into Excel.
Yeah. We love saying stop analyzing, start merchandising as one of our favorite phrases. So I guess where you do cover such a huge number of countries and regions within your role, I'm really curious if you had any interesting nuances that you've seen or examples that have emerged over the past year across different regional performance or preferences.
I would say weather, of course, is everyone's favorite answer, non-answer.
Yes. That was always my favorite thing in Monday Trade. I'd be like, it's the weather last week.
No, but we are seeing we do think that it's really important to understand weather patterns in certain regions. So you can sell fleece and our cold gear products longer in the UK than you can in the south of Italy. And that's just a fact. So it is about making sure that you do stay on top of changes in the local environment to make sure that the assortment is relevant for the consumer in a buy now, wear now mentality.
Yeah.
On top of that, there's also cultural differences. So we do see that performance-based products may perform much stronger in the UK, and more cotton-based products perform stronger in sub-med. And that's just, again, based on cultural insights that we have from those local teams. We also know that once you get into Middle East and Africa, there's different cultural norms where maybe we always want the bra destination to be in the front of the store because that's our bread and butter, perhaps in the UK. But once you get to the Middle East, perhaps that's not appropriate for every market. So you do need to take time to do active listening for your key partners in those regions to make sure that you're making sure the consumer journey is appropriate for what that consumer is looking for. And it, again, all goes back to putting that consumer at the center. If you're putting the consumer at the center, then you're able to pick up on those regional nuances. But those are a few that I would say is, one is how does the journey differ based on what's appropriate in different areas? And then also as buy now, wear now is still a strong shopping mentality or consumer buying behavior, to make sure that you are customizing and curating the assortments based on the weather in those different parts of the world.
I think it's incredible how today retailers are feeding weather data into their sales reports and the analysis that they're doing on a daily, weekly basis versus, ultimately just like, yes, I believe it was cold, or I believe they had a lot of rain there. Like the fact that people have actually the data to back that up and to be able to map category performance based on that type of data is phenomenal.
You have so many resources at your fingertips, especially with store staff. So it's really, they're the experts. They're closest to the consumer. We talk about weather, but you don't necessarily need to overhaul your whole assortment and make completely different assortments everywhere you go. But what you can do is equip and create relationships with your store staff so that if they are seeing that it's exceptionally rainy in London, that's probably a bad example, but if it's exceptionally rainy in London, which is so odd, but the store staff feels empowered and understands that perhaps you pull all of our Storm, which is our DWR treated products, they pull those to the front of the store to make it more attractive for the consumer, knowing what's going on locally in that environment. Or vice versa, if you have a store in Spain and there's all of a sudden this huge heat wave that comes in, how can you empower the store to say, hey, we think there's a huge commercial opportunity because there's strangely warm weather. We're going to pull all the shorts and tees up to the front. And that is how you can really be flexible and agile and still take some of these consumer nuances into consideration without completely overhauling the assortment every single week, because that's just not feasible.
Or scalable, I guess.
Or scalable, exactly.
Amazing. And I know the customer, you are so passionate about the consumer, and it really is at the center of everything that you do. I want to get your take in today's environment. What does it mean to be customer centric?
I think what it means to be customer centric is to make sure that the consumer is the end all be all for everything that you do. There really shouldn't be a process, a product, a strategy that you put in place that doesn't consider the consumer, because that's how you can lose focus. And in this day, having brand consistency and focus is what, wins loyalty with the consumer. So I would say what it means is making sure that you understand them, that you put it at every part of every GTM milestone. And it's really that guiding light and keeping the end experience to the consumer in a merchandiser's mind. I think that's what really drives success.
Amazing. I feel like you summed that up perfectly. In terms of putting the consumer at the heart of everything that you do, I know with your new CEO, Stephanie, she has kind of emphasized the opportunity that lies within the women's wear side of the business.
Yes.
I know it's previously been less than 25% of your revenue. So I'm really curious, how are you and the Under Armour business approaching this opportunity?
Yeah, so she is a complex consumer for us, and she is evolving. So we're trying to stay as close to her as possible. But what I think we are seeing is that she does expect a level of style and performance from us, and the way that she's navigating our brand is up to her. So we do see a part of her that is more casual, and that's where you see that trend of the oversized hoodie or the boyfriend hoodie. And then there's also this beautiful trend back towards femininity and, really celebrating who you are as a woman and playing with your proportions to feel confident in your own skin. And I think what's important for Under Armour is that we inspire her through every aspect of her journey and understand how she's navigating the brand and how she's navigating her buying through those two different journeys. So the example I'll give is, a lot of brands are looking to make oversized boyfriend cut hoodies, where perhaps she's navigating the men's pad to do that in a really natural and organic way. And what she expects from maybe the women's pad is that's where she can dial up her femininity and play with her different proportions and find a different wearing occasion that she's looking for. But what's going to be most important is that you speak to her, and you speak to her what's important to her and what's relevant for her and what, like I said, inspires her at the end of the day. We've made some strides. We know it's important. We have the innovations and the solves for her, but how do we bring it in a really clear way to attract her and make sure that she knows that Under Armour is there for her and that Under Armour can make her better? And I think we're on a journey, and we need to continue to do some work to get closer to her, to leverage athlete insights, trend analysis, what's selling out through the data that we're receiving, and how do we pull that all together under the umbrella of what Under Armour stands for to make sure we have a clearer and sharper strategy on how to win with her. And like I said, we have the tools, we have the innovation, we have the solves for her, but how do we pair that with performance and style and bring that to market in a really clear and relevant way so she knows who we are and knows that we're here for her and that we want to win and be on her journey?
Yeah. And I really appreciate you being so candid, because I think kind of there is so much information out there, but ultimately, you need to trial and test and see what works for her and for your customer, especially. You mentioned athlete insights, you mentioned market data, you mentioned kind of innovation and performance within your own business. I mean, the athlete insight piece is always going to be exciting and interesting to hear more about. Could you share a little bit more about that process? What does that entail?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll use an example recently. So I had the pleasure of spending some time with Lindsey Vonn at a activation event in Germany. And she tells this wonderful story about how she was, the first athlete that signed with the brand. And she is an Olympic gold medal downhill skier. And she hates the cold. She hates the cold.
Ironic.
Ironic. But it's so beautiful to hear a story about how Kevin, started this company on solving for the athletes. We were born on the field through the idea of bringing solutions to make the athlete focus on their body, mind, and their craft. And when, Kevin approached Lindsay and she said that she wanted to, of course, she was dedicated to improving her performance, but she's not a fan of the cold. We immediately went to work on how can we solve that for her? How can we give her warmth without the weight? How can we mix hydrophobic and hydrophilic yarns to make sure that we're wicking away the moisture to keep her dry? How do we infuse new innovations into her cold gear product to retain her body heat? So she doesn't have to worry about how cold she is, but she can really focus on her performance. And she, was able to be quite successful in that. So we're really excited to have her still be a part of the brand. But I think that's just a beautiful example of how we take athlete insights and try to find solves so they can be the best of who they are.
I think that speaks beautifully as well to what you were talking about with the women's wear consumer around wanting to feel supported and actually being able to then focus on their performance and the moment versus necessarily the clothes that they're wearing. I feel like that's an important element so that they're not distracted as to what they're actually doing in that moment and being the best that they possibly can be. So you mentioned hydrophilic yarns.
Very good, yeah.
I'm getting there. Obviously, innovation is synonymous with sportswear and is truly at the heart of Under Armour. How do you approach this through the customer's eyes?
So yes, great question. We did have a lot of learning to do as a company on how to make sure that our innovations were resonating with the consumer and understandable to the consumer. So I would say in the past, we perhaps had gone too technical on the way that we were explaining our innovation. And of course, being a global brand, you do have to work under the assumption that English is not everybody's first language. So if the explanation of the innovation is already tough to understand, and then on top of that, you're translating it into dozens of different languages, you could really lose the consumer and make it a bit too difficult. So we saw that and we took a step back to think about how can we still keep all the innovation at a high performance level, but make it much easier for the consumer to digest and buy into. So different ways to do that is to focus more on the features and benefits of the innovation, and then also to really leverage iconography and different icons and symbols to explain the innovation. So I'll give you an example. Instead of talking about the infrared rays or hydrophobic and hydrophilic yarns, we then can shift the focus to be truly about the features and benefits. So it wicks away sweat, it retains your body heat, it keeps you dry. Those are things the consumer can immediately understand, and they know that innovation is an ingredient in how that feature and benefit comes to life. And then, of course, like I said, iconography. So using different symbols on the POP in the store so the consumer can quite quickly understand what that product does for them.
So it's less about what it is, but more about what can it do for me as a customer and how is it going to benefit me and my practice.
Exactly. Everyone, when they hear Under Armour, we want them to say, well, what does it do? They should know that innovation is always going to be an ingredient in everything that we build and make, but we'll communicate it to the consumer in a more feature and benefit-driven lens.
I also love the takeaway around the iconography and the importance of that, and also focusing on that versus the technical terms. I think that's really applicable to so many of our listeners. Obviously, Sara, you've shared so many interesting anecdotes and insights on your business. We've spoken about huge growth opportunities for you within women's wear and also the opportunities that lie within your full price customer and kind of the digital business. What other opportunities are you excited about as we move into 2024?
What I think is going to be a big focus for us is making sure that we're creating really strong price to value and a consistent brand message. So we want to continue to stay true to who Under Armour is. Given all of the changes that are going on, we want to be that constant. We're not going to falter. We're going to stay true to who we are. And I think that's what's going to be really important in the next few seasons and years to come. The other thing is sustainability. And we know that we're recessions going on in different parts of the world, the consumer is smarter and they're sharper with how they spend their money. And they also want to be sustainable. They don't always want to fuel into the fast fashion channels. So what can you do to really encourage them to buy into your brand? If they have 100 euros to spend, should they buy 10 leggings at 10 euros in a more discounted environment? Or should they spend the 100 euros on one pair of leggings that's going to last them for years to come, that won't fall apart and will keep them confident and secure? But if you can keep that sharp focus, that's what's going to create brands or support brands that are going to last for the long run. And then also making sure you're creating clear price to value for the consumer. There's so many brands out there. You need to make sure you can cut through and find out why they should spend their money on you rather than someone else. And that's going to be really important for us as we move forward. And what I'm excited about is diving into the technical sports style world. So Under Armour has sold products that could be classified as sports style. We have sold hoodies and sweats, but now we're doing it with intention. We're really infusing performance and style together and bringing them to market in a really beautiful way, whether they're training, they're competing, they're recovering, or they're just living their life. We want to be with them through every aspect and make sure that we're always bringing them that level of performance and style that they expect from us.
Sarah, thank you so much. Yeah, it sounds like you have such an exciting 2024 ahead of you.
We do.
Well, thank you so much. That was wonderful. Thank you so much for listening to Inside Retail with me, Grace Hill. For more insights, head to our resources section on edited.com and follow the podcast so you don't miss an episode.